Welcome back to yet another episode of WIF Vichaar. I'm Shourya Ghai, the Deputy Coordinator at Warwick India Forum, and for this episode, I'm super stoked to welcome our guest speaker, Bela Sheth Mao. Bela is a chartered accountant and currently a senior partner at Deloitte India. She is an alumna of the Indian Revenue Services, and her professional experiences, to name a few, include working with the government actively on advocacy initiatives, such as dispute resolution, leading Shell India as the country tax lead, and heading KPMG India as senior manager. Hello, ma'am. It's an honor to have you here. How are you doing?
I'm fine, Shourya, and thank you for inviting on WIF, Vichaar, as you call it, a very interesting name for this forum. And I'm happy and I'm glad that you invited me to this forum.
Thank you. It's an honor to have you here. We have a few questions to dive into, but before we start, I would like to mention that all opinions expressed by the speaker in this interview are of personal nature and should not be compared to the views of other affiliated entities. Shall we begin with the historic perspective from your side about how this economic downturn is similar and dissimilar in ways to the ones that we experienced more than a decade ago?
Right, Shourya. So the other two, downturns that we can look back to was the 1929 Great Depression and the 2008 financial crisis. One thing common in my view for both of these were that they were primarily driven by human greed. This human greed led to the stock market crash, and because of which we got, there was an economic downturn, there was a loss in demand, a loss in investment, and which led to massive unemployment. Now, the 1929 Great Depression was restricted to the industrial world, but it did bring about global instability. And there is a view that the World War II really started after that Great Depression, because America, the industrialist world became weaker at that point. At the 2008 financial crisis was much more global, because we were a much more global economy then, but it was again restricted to the financial sector and it wasn't really as widespread to other sectors. So, but again, it led to massive unemployment and very far-reaching effects. What we are witnessing today, the big difference between this and the other two is this is a health-led crisis. It is a global pandemic, which is not occurred due to human greed. Secondly, there were no warning signs on this, right? Before we could understand what COVID is, it was upon us, and we were facing an economic lockdown. I mean, that was the only answer that was the easiest one to control the COVID, right? So it wasn't that COVID led to the economic lockdown. We had to create an economic lockdown to address the COVID situation. But what did happen from the other two crises of 1929 and 2008 was that certain structural reforms took place, right, in the stock market or with regard to unemployment benefits. So similarly, in this particular case as well, though it is going to be a long battle and a long road for us to recovery, I do hope that we are able to focus on health sector reforms, which are really important. And emerging countries like India definitely need to do a lot more on the health sector. And this pandemic will hopefully make the government and the citizens focus on those areas.
Okay. Quite similarly, as you mentioned, for emerging markets such as India, the notion of putting money where the mouth is very essential. And this leads to the question, do we require a change in the narrative to stimulate the economy? Perhaps you can shine light on lowering the GST as a means of stirring demand and activity.
So what we're experiencing now, Shourya, is a demand side shock, right? There is absolutely no demand for anything except for a few niche medical related products and essential items. Unemployment has risen massively, initially in the unorganized sector, which led to the migrant exodus that you must have witnessed. And now it is also hitting the organized sector. So clearly, there is no cash for people to spend. There is no liquidity for people. And in such circumstances, consumption is going to get hit. Now, to drive consumption, to drive demand, lowering GST rates may not be the best solution, because just because you have lower tax rates does not mean people will go out and buy. You need to give them the purchasing power, right? And that will only come with employment. So what we really need to do now is to kickstart the economy, get the factories to start working, get employment to start getting generated, put some money back in the hands of the people, give them the confidence that they have their jobs. It's only then that you will see the demand picking up. So lowering of GST rates may not be the ideal solution. And we also need to understand that the government itself has not earned revenue for 3 months in India, which is a massive hole for them. If they need to, continue spending on health sector reforms to address the pandemic, to kickstart the economy, they need money, they need revenue. And that comes from taxes. So in my view, I do not think lowering GST rates across the board is a solution to drive demand for now.
All right, that's quite insightful. Um, so, as virtually all the industries have taken a massive hit from the lockdown, and a significant portion of the workforce has been weakened, so the displacement of the workforce has also impacted the economy. So, what are your views on that, and how are we looking at getting out from that damage?
So if you see in India, we our backbone of the Indian economy is the MSMEs, right? The medium and small and micro enterprises, as we call them. They contribute about 30% of the GDP for India, of almost 50% of its exports, and they employ 100 million people. So they are massive, and they are very, very important to getting India to grow and to getting India to move forward. Now, they have been the worst hit with the pandemic, right? The lockdown and the pandemic has stopped all activities for the MSME sector. And the 3 month long lockdown means a lot of them are actually, just struggling to survive. They are, forget getting back into economic activities, struggling to survive. Now, the government has understood this problem, and it has announced a massive package for the MSMEs a month ago, which is primarily driven to supporting them financially in some form or the other. However, the uptake on this is still slow, and we will see the effects of this financial package only a couple of months down the line. So the MSME sector being the backbone, if that sector does not start performing, the economic recovery is going to be much longer in India. India has plans of being a $1 trillion economy, and for that it requires the MSME sector to support it. But having said that, the pre-COVID world and the post-COVID world are going to be very, very different. Yeah, we will see a very different way of operating. The new normal is all around social distancing, remote working. So the MSMEs will have to sort of employ what is called as Industry 4.0, where you're looking at more automation, more augmented reality, artificial intelligence, deep learning, robotics, as a way of functioning, right? And that is something in the service sector that is more or less getting incorporated. But now the manufacturing sector also needs that to ensure that they are able to operate in a during the COVID period and in a post-COVID world, but also they become efficient and they are able to be competitive as well in the post-COVID world.
Okay, yeah. So as they rightly say, every adversity has another seed for growth as well. So tracing that back to your point. So
Right.
let's talk now about people who have jobs and are still working, but on an off-site way of working. So how is the adoption of the new work from home looking like in the distant future of workplaces?
So work from home was initially provided as an added benefit by organizations, to lure talent to say, look, we'll let you work from home a day a week or 2 days a week. And that was not as widely used, but it was still an added benefit. Now it has become a way of life, right? If you want to continue your organizations, you continue working, your employees will have to work from home. There is no way out of that. So what this pandemic has done is completely turned on its head the rationale, the reasoning that leaders had to say that you have to come to office every day to be productive. That whole rationale has turned on its head to say you can be equally and more productive sitting and working from home. So work from home, in my view, is here to stay post-pandemic, as many years post this pandemic. It is going to be the way industries will operate, organizations will operate. So what that has sort of the positives for that, of course, there are certain kind of cost optimizations that the organizations would enjoy because they will require less office space and less infrastructure to support employees coming to office, and for employees the time and cost of traveling to office. But beyond that, a larger impact is that now the organizations have a much wider talent pool to tap from. You don't really have to look at people in your city who can work in your office. You can look at people anywhere sitting in the world because it's remote working, and so you can get the best talent. And also for talent that is not in metros, not in large cities, now there's a much better opportunity for them to be gainfully employed. Also people who may not want, who may not be able to go to office because of commitments at home, like mothers, or you are looking after an ailing parent, there is an opportunity to actually now continue working and fulfilling your personal responsibilities, right? So the talent pool has opened up widely, which is a big plus win-win for talent and for organizations. So the way I look at it, work from home is here to stay, and we've already heard some very large organizations say that they will continue getting the employees to work from home as a normal going forward.
That is very true. But I guess we know it for a fact that the whole world has been affected and bludgeoned by the impact of the pandemic. And like they always say, a setback is a setup for a comeback. Do you sense an optimistic feeling of revival? How does that look like in terms of the new normal that you mentioned?
Yeah, today it's crystal ball gazing, right? Everyone's crystal ball gazing when it comes to when and how and timelines in terms of the near term, right? So the silver lining is still elusive, honestly. You don't really see it, although you still have some dark clouds. But the optimism is in how a number of economies have started moving on and opening up and returning back to the economic activities. That is a very optimistic view that yes, we are now taking the next step, right? We are no longer just talking about addressing the pandemic and the health issues. Now we're looking at how do we get back to economic activity and get back to a life. So that I think is a positive. Well, so if you ask me, financial year 20 is a washout. Yeah, we don't expect anything much to happen except for the fact that, we will have countries moving out of the pandemic and we will have them moving towards an economic recovery, but we don't expect some major recoveries to happen this year for sure. But the steps, we will start seeing organizations and countries taking steps towards an economic recovery. Again, the impact and the recovery have been very different for different sectors, right? So the worst impacted, travel, tourism, hospitality, will continue to be impacted much longer. And other sectors, like you see the pharma sector, or you see some essentials, or you see some sectors like that, they will have a much faster recovery. So even if you look at recovery, it's not going to be uniform across sectors, right? So what, we're speaking to a few clients, and what they've told us is that there is you will see manufacturing activity pick up in June, July, but that is more from a backlog of orders of March. It's not new orders, right? So you may see some spikes in economic activity in the near future, but in the mid-range, it is going to be challenging, is what it looks like.
I agree with that totally.
Yeah, and for normalcy to return, I think we will require a vaccine, Shourya. I don't see it happening any other way. The virus is contagious. We've seen that, and therefore, I think people will not feel safe going back to the way they lived unless there is a vaccine that can safeguard them, right? So we will have to learn to live with this virus till there's a vaccine, and continue with our daily lives.
So, as previously mentioned, people are working from home, a totally new routine of working, and also are really far away from their own workplaces where they have maximum resources. So, does this bring to thought that if has the pandemic shifted demand for certain skills? So, in your opinion, what are those top skills which will be most valued in a workplace while working from home or while recruiting if we go back to normal?
Yeah, this is something that we have also been debating internally as to, what are the kind, what are the skill sets and upskillings that will be required, right, in the new normal. One thing is for sure that the pandemic has rung the death knell of the micromanager. Yeah, you cannot micromanage remotely. So, anyone who, the old way of working of saying, sit in front of me and I will tell you what to do, that micromanagement is not going to be the way of life going forward. What we observe and what we hear from recruiters, what are the new skills that people are looking at. They want attributes like empathy. Yeah, you need to be able to appreciate, understand under what circumstances someone else is working. Relearning collaboration, primarily because it is now remote collaboration. You cannot walk up to someone's desk in office and go and meet someone, right? You have to do it remotely, like the way we're doing it now. That is how we will have to learn to collaborate. Managing hybrid schedules is meaning, you are sitting at home, so it's your personal space, but you're doing official work. So you need to have a Chinese wall very clear to say, where does your office start and where does your home end, and where does your office end and where does your home start, right? And that's one big concern that we hear from millennials, especially, and people who've just started working from home, that it seems like a 24 by 7 day for us, because we are expected to be available all the time. So clearly, organizations will have to have parameters to say, and guidances to tell people, what is acceptable and not acceptable when you're working from home, because the personal and official space is just merged into one. The other big thing about working from home is technology, right? Without technology, understanding it, adopting it, we will not be able to effectively work from home. So the millennials are extremely well placed, like you all, to understand technology, adopt it, and move on working. And the pre-millennial generation like us will actually have to do a lot of unlearning and relearning when it comes to technology adoption. Otherwise, we will not be able to be productive, yeah, as productive in the workspace as we would want to be in the remote working scenarios. So clearly, the skills that we are looking at, do seem to be around how do you manage remote working, how self-motivated are you, how self-driven are you, because there's no one going looking over your shoulder, so that you are able to, you know, uh, finish your assignment, or submit whatever you need to do. Like similarly, when it comes to college students, what I also hear is, look, we don't have anyone telling us we have to finish an assignment. Now we need to ensure we do it on our own. We don't have parents, we don't have, I mean, maybe in your situation as well, we don't have anyone, and we have to do it on our own. So you have to be self-driven, self-motivated, planned and organized a lot more, right, when it comes to remote working. So it's not a particular sector or a particular kind of educational skill. It's more around how you adapt to remote working in your particular sector that will decide how you succeed, how much you will succeed or not.
So more like personal development, intrinsic value of learning all those values within yourself and becoming
Yeah,
better.
because the content, the knowledge that you have for your sector will still be required to deliver your work. It's about the way
True.
you deliver that has changed, right? The what you do has not changed.
That's really true. So it will only be right to state the fact that for our generation, the Gen Z or the millennials, this is one of a type. This is the first recession, if you will, that we are experiencing as a youth population. And we've only heard about what happened in 2008 from my personal experience. I only heard about what happened in 2008 and realized that the economy went through a downturn worldwide. But this is the first time I'm actually facing it upright. So, what advice would you like to give to our viewers as they step out to face the post COVID-19 world?
We have been witnessing a volatile world, for a while. I think since the 2000 dot-com boom, and since all that, there has been, VUCA kind of a world, as you were mentioning. But the level of uncertainty has just gone up with the pandemic because of the global impact of the uncertainty and the volatility, right? As I said, the 2008 financial crisis was global, but restricted to the financial sector, not so much to other. This is across sectors, across countries, across stratas of society in any country. So it's all across the board, and therefore the volatility and uncertainty is extremely, extremely high this time. It's something that probably the world has not faced before, as I said. So maybe your generation has not seen a recession. The world has not seen, an economic shock of this size and scale. And therefore, if you see our reactions also, they are all just testing and trying, right? We really don't know. We really don't know how to address this. Everyone's just trying different strategies to try and see what will work, right? And we have still not found the answer to it, right? It's still the trial and testing mode. uh, and also that the recovery, the kind of recovery we'll have is also all different types. Some say V shape, some say W shape, some is U, and but it's all based on assumptions which are changing and will change as we progress. So we really don't know what kind of recovery is going to happen. So, for a generation like yours that is now going to step out and, get their first jobs and, be gainfully employed, yeah, they are trying times, and they are, what you need to do is really be resilient. Yeah, you need to look at, according to me, a little bit longer view, because the way I look at it, that maybe financial 20, we may not see anything, but there is a view that by FY21 mid, we will start seeing economic growth pick up, right? So you have a year and a half where you will have to put your head down and just move on and, stay together. So I'm a long distance runner. If you take an analogy of long distance running, if you say I have to run 21 kilometers, at the first step, it's an impossible task. You have to break that route into smaller milestones that you can achieve. So I will do the first 2 kilometers, the first 5 kilometers, and then when you achieve the first five, you do the next five, right? So that's the way you will have to move along in this 1.5 to 2 year period, to say, what are the milestones I would like to achieve to ensure that when the pandemic ends, which it will, so I don't see any uncertainty around it ending. It's about the timing of it ending, and what kind of recovery we have is uncertain. So when it ends, where would I want to be? And you should be ready to then launch yourself into the world, right? Because this is the time when you prepare for that. And so you will have to take those small baby tiny steps, and maybe change a plan and say, oh, I'm going to go and grab my first job, which may not happen, but that does not mean you get, it's a setback. You have to then see, what is it that you will have to be ready with, what are the skill sets, what are the attributes you require to ensure that when the market really does open up, you are prepared to grab the opportunity, right? It's carpe diem at that point, and not today for you. So, as somebody really, some saying that I just came through, it says, it's your reaction to adversity and not adversity itself that determine how your life story will develop. So it's really up to you as to how you look at this. Yeah, they are trying times, but to me, it's also an opportunity, for you all to have actually witnessed a recession at a time that you all are today, and to have said that these are the steps we took to overcome it and to succeed in life.
Thank you for that, Bella. That was wonderful and insightful at the same time. Well, this is the end of this episode, and I hope our conversation gives a valuable insight on the outlook of industries and the economy going forwards. It has been my pleasure to host you, and on behalf of Warwick India Forum, I would like to thank you for your time, and I hope you and your family continue to remain safe and in good health during these tough times. Thank you.
Thank you, Shourya, and you too. I hope everyone is safe and sound, and all of you all the best to you all. I'm sure you will have a great future.
Thank you so much.